and welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Freed, and I'm joined, as always, by my man, Mike Luciano. Mike, how are you doing today, buddy? What's going on?
How do you think I feel about the New York Jets?
I feel great. You know why, Mike? Because Trevor Siemian is my goddamn quarterback.
Justin, we go back a little bit. We're like brothers, right? That is the saddest thing I've ever heard.
I'm all in on the Trevor Siemian bandwagon. I am the president of the Trevor Siemian fan club. I'm excited for Trevor time.
Blink twice if Trevor Siemian's holding you at gunpoint, Justin.
I'm going to close my eyes so I can't blink.
Jeez, but man, we got a full pack show for you today. We're talking Trevor Siemian. We're talking Jets Chiefs, the trouncing in front of America's sweetheart that is going to happen in front of the masses on Sunday Night Football. We're going to preview that. We're going to talk about an 80-year-old man who really had a bone to pick with the New York Jets, Joe Namath, coming out and all piss and vinegar, getting really angry about the Jets. But I have a message, Justin, from our friend over at DraftKings. Yes, sir.
You tell.
I will tell, thank you, because DraftKings, Jets fans, DraftKings is up their sign-up offer to kick off football season. New users can place a $5 first bet and instantly claim $200 in bonus bets, plus up to $150 back in bonus bets if your team loses, which the Jets might this weekend, probably will. All you have to do is sign up with the code FSBETS, that is FSBETS. It not only gets you these great bonuses, but it directly supports the show. So thank you guys if that's how you want to support it. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use the code FSBETS to maximize your bets. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly and check the episode description for the full terms of the offer. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it may be that you get your podcasts. We are there. Make sure to download. Make sure to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube and TikTok at the Jet Press for both. We have really been growing a little bit. And actually, before we get in, I did talk to Justin about this earlier. We're at around a little over 350 on YouTube. I'm sure some of you have seen that Sauce Gardner sandwich going around where it was like a honey bun with turkey and sausage and cheese and Cheetos, and you'd crap your pants if you took one bite of that thing. If we double our subscribers and we get to 700, I will eat that sandwich. So that is your key to subscribe on YouTube at the Jet Press and to just support two Jets fans who love talking about the Jets and all the crap they throw in our face. At least, finally, after a very chaotic week and one of the worst press conferences I've ever seen from Robert Saleh, who said everybody's got to be better except Zach Wilson. The box score is not an indicator of how he played. I agree it was probably said he played better than he did. And basically tried to deflect and say, you know what? Zach Wilson's not playing that bad, which, I mean, we got two eyes. We're not, like, catatonic here. We could see the guy sucks. It's unfair to him. He's in the situation. Doesn't change the fact he's sucking. They finally make a move. It's not Carson Wentz. It's not even Matt Ryan. It's not Phillip Rivers. It's not Colin Kaepernick. It's not anybody. It's Trevor Siemian.
Hell yeah.
Who was signed to the practice squad. Now, fans of the Jets might remember Trevor Siemian, who played a whole one quarter for them, and then his ankle got snapped into a million pieces because Myles Garrett exploded it in front of the national audience.
Dude, he was the Aaron Rodgers before Aaron Rodgers.
He was, and then we had to watch 2 Luke Falk games because of that. So,
yeah,
thank you for that, Trevor Siemian. But a little bit of a quick refresher on Trevor Siemian for the uninitiated. Former 250th overall pick out of Northwestern, so kind of Brock Purdy before Brock Purdy here. He was the starter in Denver for 2 years after Peyton Manning retired, so big shoes to fill. He was not great, kind of a bottom-tier starter. Like, he won him games. The Broncos were 13-11 in games he started, but not a guy who's going to win you games with his arm. And since then, he's been kind of a rent-a-backup. He's been with Minnesota and the Jets, obviously, and New Orleans and Cincinnati, where he was cut during the preseason. But the Jets brought him back. And Trevor Siemian is a guy who I think, even though I'm not a big fan of Trevor Siemian, because I think he's probably the most average quarterback in the league. And not in terms of like he's the 15th best. I mean, average size, average arm talent, average mobility. Like there's really not one trait where he stands out. If anything, I was watching him, and I've seen this comparison a couple times. his film almost reminds me kind of Mike White, where he's kind of a lumbering guy with a big slow release, but sees the field well, gets the ball where it needs to go. He stands in the pocket and takes hits. I mean, that was plentiful on his New Orleans film. And I don't know about you, but if I had my druthers by probably week 6 or so, because Robert Saleh already said Siemian is going to be inactive this week. I think by week 6, because Tim Boyle's not even an option and shouldn't be in the league, much like Zach Wilson, Siemian is probably going to end up starting, because I think it would be a horrible look for the Jets if they get a guy who's had a limited amount of success, not a ton, but, some, and they just refuse to turn to him no matter how bad Zach Wilson is. I feel like we're going to see Siemian at some point. And I'm excited a little bit, because I've at least seen Siemian operate an NFL offense and win NFL games, which Zach Wilson does not do as frequently.
Yeah, I mean, Siemian is a perfectly fine quarterback. I'll put aside the Trevor Siemian pom-poms for a second, because I know I'm going over the top with my appreciation of Trevor Siemian, but he's a perfectly fine backup quarterback in the NFL, which realistically, that's all we've been asking for on this Jets roster. Realistically, there wasn't a ton more that they could have done in this situation. Now, everyone will say, oh, they could have signed Carson Wentz. They could have. They absolutely could have. It seems as though the reasons for that are not performance related and are more off-field stuff. I'm pretty sure he wore out his welcome very quick in Indy, and he did the same thing in Washington. And I think there's a reason he's not on an NFL roster. And it's not because of his talent, because for as volatile and mistake-prone as Carson Wentz is, he is absolutely one of the probably, I would say, 32 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He should probably be a starter on some team, but he's not. And there's a reason for that. And again, it's probably not performance related. Trevor Siemian, if you're looking at the remaining options on the open market, was about as good as they were going to do. Like, you could argue, oh, they could have signed Colt McCoy, Nick Foles, whoever, right? Trevor Siemian is in that tier of perfectly acceptable backup quarterback. I mean, 2 years ago with the Saints, when he was filling in for injury, he threw 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in I think it was 6 games, 4 starts. That is significantly better production than anything we've ever seen out of Zach Wilson. And that's really all that matters here. The Jets brought in somebody who was better than Zach Wilson. And it would have been very difficult to bring in someone that was worse than Zach Wilson. And I think a lot of fans might not fully appreciate how significant of an upgrade this is. And this isn't necessarily to say that Trevor Siemian is some great quarterback, because as you just went through, he's not. He's obviously not. I would say Trevor Siemian is probably roughly around that 50 to 60th best quarterback in the world tier. Like, he is mid to low end backup, I think, is where I'd say Trevor Siemian is at this stage. Zach Wilson's probably not in the top 100 quarterbacks in the world. And I don't think that is a hot take. I think the numbers pretty much prove that. I mean, there's been a graphic floating around on Twitter where it was, I use the term historically bad with Zach Wilson a lot. And it's because it's true, because if you look at that chart I was talking about, where it basically charts quarterback efficiency for every single quarterback that has played in the NFL over the last decade, the only player that has been worse than Zach Wilson is Josh Rosen. They are a significant tier below others, including guys like Deshaun Kaiser, RIP Dwayne Haskins, CJ Beathard. Like, Zach Wilson, he's in that tier below those guys.
And also, if you expand the data sets, I think it was like 400 or 500 plays or something like that. If you expand the plays to the minimum amount of plays Tim Boyle had, Tim Boyle is like right above Josh Rosen. Like, they're right next to each other.
Yeah. So the Jets went out this offseason and signed one of the only guys who was actually worse than Zach Wilson statistically. And so that's why no matter what signing they made, as long as they signed somebody, it was going to be an upgrade. Now, the Jets aren't going to win a Super Bowl with Trevor Siemian. I mean, you never know what can happen in the NFL, but I don't think the Jets are going to win a Super Bowl with Trevor Siemian. But I do believe he gives them an opportunity to stabilize the quarterback position, give them actually capable quarterback play, and it doesn't prevent them from potentially making a move at the deadline if they're still in contention. I mean, we could talk about this more later in the show or next week or whatever. I assume this will be a hot topic conversation, but guys like Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, if everything goes to shit in Minnesota, they could be potential trade deadline targets for the Jets. I don't think that Trevor Siemian, I don't think they signed Trevor Siemian with the expectation that he alone is going to lead them to the playoffs. But he is an upgrade over what they currently have. He stabilizes the roster, and that's all they needed. They literally just needed somebody better than Zach Wilson. I hated seeing comments all last week saying, well, you know what are the Jets going to do? They lost Aaron Rodgers to an injury. There's not much they could do at this stage of the offseason or at this stage of the season. Yeah, but the bar isn't replacing Aaron Rodgers. The bar is upgrading over Zach Wilson. The Jets did that by signing Trevor Siemian. He's not great. He's not going to lead them to a Super Bowl, but he's fine. And fine is better than what they have.
I went back and watched those New Orleans games. I remember watching them all right, there's no way he was that good. 11 touchdowns in 6 games because came in as a backup and threw a couple garbage time stuff. I'm like, all right, let me look. And spoiler alert, he was not that level when he played. But New Orleans had playmakers. He got the ball to the playmakers. And the big thing, I remember there was a couple clips going around of Trevor Siemian, both in the preseason last year with the Bears, where I actually thought, even when you look at how other quarterbacks played against the Jets, what he had on that team in rainy conditions against the Jets defense, he didn't play terribly. He had that big throw to Claypool over Sauce Gardner. Again, I'm not saying Trevor Siemian's going to be a savior, but Trevor Siemian can play quarterback in the NFL. Zach Wilson just straight up can't. And I'm going back to look at there, and he has a weird, almost kind of like a cavalier-y thing. Like, he thinks he has Zach Wilson's arm. He doesn't, but he thinks he does. And a lot of his interceptions come from him trying to make throws that Zach Wilson, if he had his head on straight, could make, but Trevor Siemian can't. So that's part of the negatives. And again, he can make some plays on the move. His mobility's decreased a little bit with age and with the ankle injury. When he was with Denver, he could actually move around a little bit. I don't really know about that now. But there are times when stuff breaks down. He could scoot a little bit. He had a 20-yard touchdown run with the Saints in that sort of stretch of 4 games. There are moments where you look at Trevor Siemian and you look at how the Jets are playing, and how many times was Garrett Wilson just wide open? And you're like, Trevor Siemian would have hit that. Trevor Siemian would have hit that. He's not going to throw for 300 yards. But you know what? If the Jets made this exact move the second Aaron Rodgers went down, they're 2-1.
Yep.
And we're sitting here talking about, we're probably not going to beat the Chiefs, but there are a couple things we can do. Brock Osweiler beat Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football. Things can happen. Here's a couple little things we need to do instead of just saying doom and gloom and the world's over, like we are, because we know who the quarterback is, Zach Wilson. So it's going to take a while for Siemian to get up to speed. Apparently this offense is like calculus, and you need a month to study it because they won't even entertain, bringing guys up that quickly. That's always what I hear. Oh, the offense is tough, and he's got to learn the system. Well, dumb it down a little bit. That's what I would say. But again, I'm not thrilled for Trevor Siemian. I'm really not. But
I am.
I'm done with Zach Wilson. So by virtue of Siemian being not Zach Wilson, he's immediately an upgrade. And I think he probably gives you a much higher floor because, again, he can make difficult throws that Zach Wilson can make, but he gets in his head. Trevor Siemian just lets it rip. And 90% of other NFL quarterbacks, they're going to let those throws rip. Now, he has to overcome an offensive line that, while it is not as bad as people say it is, there's issues with it. They're moving guys around. It's another new combination. He's got to deal with an offensive coordinator that I really don't know what he does. I don't know, what are the hallmarks of Nathaniel Hackett's offense? Mike McDaniel, it's motion. Kyle Shanahan, it's zone runs. What does Hackett do?
It's Aaron Rodgers, obviously.
Exactly. So he's got to have to overcome all that, but we got to throw momentum behind him. He's the only one that has any sort of ceiling at this point.
Which is amazing to say.
Of a number 2 overall pick 3 years ago. He has no ceiling.
Truly astounding comment to say that Trevor Siemian has the highest ceiling of the quarterbacks in the Jets roster.
And it's true.
Highest realistic ceiling. Because obviously Zach Wilson has the highest ceiling, but in terms of guys who can realistically even touch that, Zach Wilson isn't realistically going to reach his ceiling with the Jets. It's just not going to happen. I'm glad you brought up the offensive line because I had an interesting stat that I found earlier. And it kind of speaks to how much of the issues the Jets had with pressure against the Patriots were a result of just Zach Wilson being Zach Wilson. The Patriots in that game, they generated pressure on 61.5% of Jets dropbacks on Sunday. That was the Patriots' highest mark in 5 years. The last time that they have generated more that much pressure per down, per snap, was 2018. However, Zach Wilson had the 3rd highest average time to throw in the NFL this week. So obviously, look, the stat isn't perfect. Part of that is Zach Wilson trying to scramble to extend plays. I'm aware of that.
When he doesn't fall down.
When he doesn't fall down or whatever. But a lot of it, like if you see any situation where there's a high pressure rate and also a high time to throw, I mean, look at the Chicago Bears. Justin Fields is the perfect example of that. So many of those pressures, so many of those sacks he takes are on him. The same thing was true at Zach Wilson. The offensive line is still not great. They started 3 dudes who were playing a position they had not played at all this summer on Sunday, right? They started Mekhi Becton at left tackle. He didn't take left tackle reps. They started Joe Tippmann at guard. He mostly didn't take guard reps in the summer. He mostly played center. And then, of course, Elijah Vera Tucker was playing tackle. They didn't play him at all at tackle in the summer. And I still think this was by far their best offensive line performance. I'm very glad. We can give the Jets props for this. I'm very glad they went through with the decision to not start Billy Turner, not start Max Mitchell. And they said, let's just actually get our 5 best guys on the field. Now, I know there was some talk that if Wes Schweitzer was healthy, because he had a concussion, he suffered a concussion in practice, that if he was healthy, he would have started at right guard. I really hope the Jets do not make that move and go back to that, because Joe Tippmann was excellent.
They would have. They always play the dumb vets.
Joe
the young guys.
He was the 4th highest graded. Again, take PFF grades with a grain of salt, whatever. He was the 4th highest graded pass blocking interior offensive lineman this week. Guard, center, anything. He was really, really good. He played very, very well. Elijah Vera Tucker was outstanding at right tackle. Both of them were really, really, really good. And I think just so many of those offensive line issues that we talk about. Now, again, week 1 and week 2, I think a lot more of it was on the offensive line. Although, again, we talked about it. I think they were kind of set up to fail by a coaching staff that just did not have a good game plan, specifically against Dallas. And
Micah Parsons is just really good, full stop. It doesn't matter who you have.
Another really interesting chart that's floating around where it basically charted offensive line matchup difficulty. Dwayne Brown is in a tier of his own in terms of matchup difficulty this year. Nobody is even close to the difficulties that he faced. Now, he still graded out very poorly on that chart. Like, he performed poorly, but he also had by far the most difficult assignment, and it wasn't even close. By the way, the guard with the most difficult assignment was Elijah Vera Tucker. So it just kind of goes to show the Jets have faced some really, really, really good pass rushes over the first few weeks. I expect the offensive line to be better. I expect them to be better when they don't have Zach Wilson under center. And I know you said week 6, Mike. I'm looking at week 5. Realistically, that's what I'm hoping for. Because not only do I not want to see 2 more games of Zach Wilson at quarterback, but think of it this way. The Jets play the Broncos in week 5. Obviously, there's already some bad blood because of what happened in the offseason and Sean Payton's comments. But this could be a double revenge game for Trevor Siemian. Not only is it's his former team, it's the Denver Broncos, but it's his former coach. He played under Sean Payton in New Orleans. I think it'd be really, really fun to get. I mean, fun isn't necessarily what the Jets should be going for here, but that's what I'm going for.
At this point, they're not winning, so let's try fun.
I think it'd be so fun if they went out against Denver, had Trevor Siemian come out. Hell, give him the American flag. Let him have the Aaron Rodgers. It's in Denver, right?
Yeah, it's in Denver.
I don't even care. Let him run out with the American flag. Let him come out, give him this whole standing ovation from the sideline, treat him as a hero, have him talk shit about Sean Payton all week, let him stare down that Broncos sideline, and let him go out there and throw for 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and 150 yards and a Jets victory. I want nothing more than for that to happen in week 5.
I mean, better against the defense that gave up 70 points. But I want to get to some reports of some turmoil that might be bubbling under the surface. And I know exactly what caused it. Again, Rich Cimini said, some defensive players, if this keeps going on, are going to flip their shit and get angry, which I could not fault a single one of them for that, because people's money and people's livelihoods are getting messed with. I said this on the Chef Press before he got on the stream. Like, Wilson was so bad. Mike LaFleur didn't have connections. He probably wouldn't be coaching this year because of how bad he looked. Like, he literally is impacting people's livelihoods and future, and then the coach going to get fired and take their kids out of school, or that's how much this is impacting everything. And I know it might cause that turmoil was that press conference, that Robert Saleh press conference. That was as bad as you're going to get. And again, at first I was angry. At first I was furious, because I'm being lied to. You're pissing on my head and telling us it's raining. You're telling me Zach Wilson everybody's got to play better except Zach. Although he later retracted that. Today he said Zach's got to play better. But he basically said everybody's got to play better without mentioning Zach by name, which pissed me off. The box score didn't really tell the true story of how things went, which was a weak quote, and trying to make it seem like we believe in Zach. Well, you can try to work him back up. You can try to just say, hey, Zach, like, we like you, because he's probably not a bad guy, but like, that's insulting to your fans. Just say, like, oh yeah, actually what you're seeing is completely wrong. Everything's fine. This is how it's supposed to go. That's what it got. So originally that's how I was thinking. And then I kind of take it back. I'm like, poor Robert Saleh. I mean, what's he supposed to do? Because I mean, they weren't going to put him in for Tim Boyle. Everybody knows he sucks. Like this poor guy. Like, it's an impossible situation. It's an impossible situation. They're stuck with him because, again, they added Trevor Siemian, and we're excited about Trevor Siemian for whatever that's worth. But if you look at it right now, they added a guy to the practice squad, and still Zach Wilson's number 1 and Tim Boyle's number 2. So functionally, there hasn't been a change, and there may not be a change functionally as much as we might like it to happen soon. So it's going to be the status quo, and it's going to be the same thing every week. They're going to get killed, and it's going to be because of Zach. And then Garrett Wilson and CJ Mosley got to go and lie and say, we got to play better. That Sauce Gardner quote broke my heart. We could have allowed zero points. It's like, man, come on. And you can do that for a week or two with a young guy. You can't do that for 17 weeks. And again, I don't think it's Saleh's fault. I really don't. I think he's got to take the slings and arrows for this front office. Now, again, they added it now, but one of the problems I have with it, Joe Douglas never talks. Joe Douglas talks after the draft, before the season, during the bye week or like the trade deadline, and then after the season. And that's all you get out of Joe Douglas.
And when they trade for Aaron Rodgers.
Like, that's all you get out of Joe Douglas. So he is deflecting these questions, which I guess is what he's supposed to do. But like, he can't. There's nothing Robert Saleh can do right now to change the situation. He's helpless. And he might get fired. He could lose a locker room and lose his job because he really just doesn't have any other options. And I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it on Sunday after the game, and we were already talking then before the press conference, before the Rich Cimini report came out, and we were saying that he's risking losing the locker room if they continue to start Zach Wilson. That's realistically what the situation was. We already saw a couple of sideline blowups during the game. We saw Garrett Wilson being very unhappy about what was going on. You could even just tell it watching back the film. There's numerous plays where he's just visibly upset because he knows he's open. He knows he should be getting the ball. He went into the season thinking, all right, offensive player of the year expectations. I got Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I'm going to put up 1,500 yards, whatever.
I said he was going to lead the AFC in receiving yards. Yeah. Tyreek would have done it anyway now, but that's what I thought he was going to do.
And that wasn't a crazy take at all. There were so many people saying that. He was one of the betting favorites for offensive player of the year. So to have those expectations going into the year and to know how great you still are, and unfortunately, you know what the issue is. You know your quarterback just can't get you the ball. I don't blame him for being upset. And we saw that Michael Carter getting into an argument with running backs coach Taylor Embry as well. There's clearly some dissension in that locker room. We were saying it on Sunday before the Saleh press conference. And look, I'm not somebody that tries to read too much into press conference quotes. Generally, I think they don't mean much. In most cases, they really don't mean much. I think Tuesday or Monday was not one of those cases. And I said this immediately on Twitter because Saleh came across, and I think this is what Cimini said as well yesterday, that Saleh came across as a, quote, Zach apologist. He made excuses, every excuse in the book, and blamed literally every player on the team with the exception of Zach Wilson.
He's a BYU fan. He's what the BYU fans on Twitter are.
He said the quote, we need to be better around Zach. He never once said during his entire press conference on Monday that Zach needs to be better. All he needed to do was say that. He said that today. He changed it and said that today, likely because he realized he should have said it on Monday.
He got embarrassed.
Yeah, and he didn't say that. Instead, he talked about how the defense had a miscue in that touchdown. He talked about how the offensive line needs to be better, how the team needs to be better around him. He blamed everybody with the exception of Zach Wilson. Needless to say, those quotes didn't go over well. Not to mention he said all that and seemingly made it seem as though they had zero intentions to consider a quarterback change. Now, I didn't believe that at the time when he said that Zach Wilson was their unquestioned starter. I did not believe that they fully thought that. I believe that meant he was going to start another week and that they were going to still explore their options, and they did. They brought in Trevor Siemian. But I think the comments that really went over poorly with the locker room were not holding Zach Wilson accountable and basically blaming everyone else, because it feels like Zach Wilson is being held to a different standard than the rest of the roster. If any other player, and again, Siemian said this in his report, if any other player at any other position had performed as poorly as Wilson has to this point, they would have been benched. They would not be.
Salah's done that before. So why with him? That's why it leads me to believe this isn't in his hands. Because I like Robert Saleh. I like his defense. That's why I'm a little bit against firing him even if he's bad this year. Because they could hire a guy like a Sean Payton who hires the wrong defensive coordinator. And even though the Broncos got the same general like structure, they gave up 70 points because they don't have good coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm afraid the defense could collapse without him. That's why I like Robert Saleh.
Here's my theory, okay? And this is going to be unfounded. This is going to be some partial conspiracy theory, partial, I don't know, just what the impact of that conspiracy
theory. I love a good conspiracy theory.
And I'm not a conspiracy theory type person. I don't believe that the Jets coaching staff and that Joe Douglas watched Zach Wilson play last year and said he can be QB2. I don't believe they watched him play, that they watched his tape and said, okay, we are okay with him going into the season as our primary backup quarterback. I think there was something else at play. My conspiracy theory is maybe Woody Johnson. That's where the conspiracy theory comes in. That's unfounded. I have no idea if that's true. Maybe I'm just coping. I have no idea. Maybe I'm coping and trying to defend Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh when I shouldn't be. Maybe they're just bad evaluators. I have no idea. But that's what I think happened. And then I think that they talked themselves into, okay, look, he's learning under Aaron Rodgers. He's regaining his confidence. Maybe he can salvage his career here or at least be a competent backup. And then, unfortunately, he was immediately thrust into action, and they did not expect that. They anticipated him sitting behind Rodgers for an entire year where he can fully reset his mind. Instead, he had a summer. He had an offseason to do that. And evidently, that was not enough time. And so I think that they maybe were forced into it and then talked themselves into it, and that's why they held out as long as they did. They shouldn't have held out as long as they did. After Rodgers went down is the moment they should have signed another quarterback. Instead, like you said, they waited a couple of weeks, and now they're stuck with Zach Wilson going into week 4 in a primetime game. This is the first time, by the way, I said this to you before the show. This is the first time the Jets are on Sunday Night Football in a decade. The last time the Jets were on Sunday Night Football, and this is going to sound weird, was the butt fumble. That's considered Sunday Night Football. Even though it was a Thursday night game, it was on NBC. It's considered part of Sunday Night Football. That's the last time the Jets were on Sunday Night Football. A decade later, they're now going and they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs at home, where the crowd is going to boo at the first mess up.
Taylor Swift in the building. It's like we're the Washington Generals.
Taylor Swift in the building. Like it is perfectly set up for another Jets embarrassment on primetime television. And that it just sucks. And that sucks. Would Trevor Siemian have been like a lot better? Probably not, but he would have been better. I don't think they would have won the game with Siemian, but they would have had a chance at probably not getting embarrassed. I don't foresee a scenario where the Jets do not get embarrassed on Sunday. I really don't. And I want to be optimistic. And I want to say, oh, there's a chance like this could happen and these things can go right. And maybe Zach Wilson looks competent. I don't believe any of that. I genuinely don't believe there's a single chance that the Jets look like a competent football team compared to the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. And that sucks. And it just sucks.
One thing that I realized too, when listening back to some of his quotes, the most illuminating one, and where I kind of figured out kind of why there might be some kernel of truth, even if he 10% believes in Zach Wilson and he's acting like it's 100. When he said he didn't turn the ball over, that is pure defensive head coach speaking and I'm not against hiring defensive coach. I mean, look at the longest tenure guys. It's all Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll. Like, you hire good coaches. Sean McDermott, like you hire good coaches, whatever side of the ball they're on. But when I hear he didn't turn the ball over, that means they're telling him, don't turn the ball over. And I think Dan Orlovsky did a pretty good job of breaking this down. You can see Zach is so scared. Like that 1/3 and whatever play where he's back at his own 5 and Garrett Wilson's wide open on an in-breaking post route. And he just goes 1, 2, 3, check down. Like he wasn't even entertaining throwing to Garrett Wilson. He was throwing the check down the whole way because they saw him early on. Remember that first Patriots game where he was just flipping the ball on 4 interceptions? And then he had the Broncos game where he got shut out, and they're like, all right, shut your brain off. We're only going to do the most basic Fisher-Price, kiddie offense possible. Like, as minimally involved as you can be as a quarterback. And it didn't really work, but it was better than him throwing 4 interceptions. But they also just completely emasculated and neutered the guy. Because now the only justification, the only one that really holds any water among Zach Wilson defenders that they keep putting out there is he's got insane arm talent. That's all. The arm talent, arm talent, arm talent. Arm talent doesn't mean anything if all you're doing is throwing checkdowns and not really looking down the field. It's like in the NBA, everybody's shooting now. It's like a big guy, 7'1" or shooting threes. It's like if you're 7'1" and shooting threes, you might as well be 6'3". If you don't actually use your height, if you don't use Zach Wilson's arm, yeah, it can come back to bite you in the ass. But so is the current strategy. And that's the issue, too. It doesn't seem like Salah's really going to budge on that just because of how he is philosophically and how his brain is wired. So there's no pound of flesh the Jets can get. They know they're not going to be more experimental on offense and have have McCole Hardman get in the game and run some deep routes. Like, they know that's not going to happen. They know they can't fire a coordinator because they're not going to fire Hackett because Rodgers is coming back. So Rodgers says, don't fire Hackett, or if you fire Hackett, I'm not coming back. They're not going to fire him. So there's no comeuppance. There's no catharsis. There's no resolution. We just got to eat this crap for however long until potentially Trevor Siemian comes to maybe save us. The fact he can't sense that people could be frustrated by that, and we're fans. Imagine if our money depended on that. Imagine if we were in that locker room and we were playing great, 15 points. I believe, I could be wrong. I think Matt O'Leary pointed this out. The average NFL team scores, I think, 23 points a game now.
Yeah.
And if the Jets scored that in their last 17 starts with Zach Wilson, they'd be 12-5.
I think it was in their last 18 starts, they'd be 15-3.
15-3. Okay, I must have.
That's the stat I saw. That's the stat I saw, which is even more insane.
15-3 if they had an average offense.
If they scored
15-3.
If they scored 23 points a game in their last 18 starts, in their last 18 games, they'd be 15-3.
And yet here, what are they now?
And you have some people blaming the defense.
And you have Robert Saleh blaming the defense.
Yeah. I truly believe that Saleh regrets what he said. Like, I don't believe that Robert Saleh, like, I think that today's press conference, what he immediately said today, made me think that he saw and he listened back to what he said on Monday, and maybe he heard the murmurs in the locker room, and he realized that he probably should have taken more accountability for Zach Wilson, or at least shown more accountability on Zach Wilson's behalf. And yeah, I mean, I know that we already got people talking about it in chat, and we were going to talk about this anyway. I know that it's not only the people in the Jets locker room that are upset, Mike, because Robert Saleh and this entire Jets organization pissed off probably the only person who I've never seen be this mad about the Jets, and that's Joe Namath. And before we talk about that,
as Niner Gang says in chat, I need to get to this. Is Joe Namath going to show up at practice and beat Zach with a trash can? I mean, he might hit him with a heavier, a blunt object.
I love how
strangle him at this point.
I love how we got Niner Gang in the chat.
We might see an 80-year-old man strangle Zach Wilson because of how. And this is Joe Namath. This is Joe Willie Namath. He defended all of the Jets crap for however long because he, like us, wants to see him win again.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. But really quick, before we get into the Joe Namath thing, I did say on Twitter that an announcement, and I think this is a good time to announce it because it sort of relates to this. I don't know. It's another older Jets player named Joe. Named Joe. We have an interview dropping tomorrow with New York Jets legend and Pro Football Hall of Famer Joe Klecko. So that's pretty cool. For audio listeners listening to this after the fact that are not listening live, that are listening on audio, stick around because it should be at the end of the podcast. For those of you watching live or listening back on video after, it should be up on YouTube tomorrow. So just keep an eye on that. I did ask, as a spoiler, I asked Joe Klecko his thoughts on the Namath comments. So you could hear what his thoughts were about Joe Namath's comments. I asked him about some guys in the Jets, current players, like maybe guys who he think could join him in the Hall of Fame one day. It was a pretty fun time. Anyway, back to the other Joe Namath. You're right, Mike. You're right, because there's think of this. Think of all that Joe Namath as a Jets fan, right? Because obviously he was a player, but he's been a fan for decades now.
How he's not with the organization, though, in an official capacity is just like a special advisor to the owner. It baffles me.
You're right, but think that all that he's lived through. He's lived through so much Jets misery and turmoil over the last, many, many, many decades. This right here is what drove him to be the angriest I've ever seen him. I've never seen him say what he said about the Jets organization. He always finds a positive spin on it. He was very complimentary of Sam Darnold, even when Sam Darnold left. Obviously, very complimentary of every Jets quarterback that they've had. He came out and was like, Zach Wilson's awful. It was disgusting to watch him play. I'm done with him. The Jets need to trade him. He's gone. He called out the coaching staff. He called out Robert Saleh and said that maybe they need to go too. I've never heard Joe Namath be like this. I've never heard this, and I think that should be very alarming for the Jets. Obviously, Joe Namath isn't the most important. His opinion doesn't matter the most of everybody in that organization or anybody having to deal with that organization. But it says something that a franchise icon who has been through decades and decades of misery watching this team is now finally like, this is the final straw. I think that says something.
I will say this too, not to get morbid, but I also think, I mean, Joe Namath is 80 years old. Maybe there's a part of him who's like, look, man, I thought I was going to get one last one in before, you know what, like, we got to hurry up here.
Dude, I got my dad telling me that. Like, he's like, they better win before I die. Like,
I mean, maybe there's a part of him that thinks that, but also, well, I think it's significant. Woody Johnson, because he's an asshole billionaire and he only cares about other billionaires think. Woody Johnson cares what successful, quote unquote, successful people or people who can throw their weight around think about his organization. He's, even during the worst times, he's always been very conscious of how the Jets are perceived. And I don't think it's a coincidence that after all this time where they did not add a quarterback, Joe Namath does that and they at least get Trevor Siemian. I think maybe Woody was like, all right, Joe, you got to do something. You got to do something. Or who knows what else Joe's going to do. And however many fans are going to get riled up. And
dude, in that case, can Namath start complaining about like Mecole Hardman not getting snaps? Can Namath come out and be like, Jeremy Ruckert needs to play more?
Bring him back every week. I don't get what this coaching stat Hackett is doing schematically. I'm like, oh, this is great.
Just feed him all the information we need Joe Douglas to hear and Robert Saleh to hear.
I remember I almost met Joe Namath once too. I saw him at remember old MetLife had that like stadium club thing, like right before you went in.
I don't think I was never at like the old stadium. I never went to the old stadium.
Yeah. Well, I remember going there, and then this is like Joe's doing better now, but I think at the time he had a procedure and he was like walking with a cane, and then my dad's like, "That's Joe Namath." I'm like, "That's Joe Namath, like the greatest, you know." Yeah. But then later, now he's doing great. He looks great for 80, actually, I would say.
Yeah, he does.
But one debate, or at least one line of kind of thinking that I've seen popped up lately, wasn't even about the comments. It was like, should he have said it? Like like, was it right? Was it proper etiquette? Was it out of line for him to even say it? And
who cares?
I know who cares, but like it brings up a point that I've been making about Zach in general, which we've said too, it's unfair for him from a professional point of view because he can't perform the task he's being asked to. And he has to do it every week, and then he has to have people lie about it and say, no, he actually can do it. Which, if you're Zach Wilson, that would hurt me more than some of the boos. Because it would make me feel like a kid who you have to treat like a baby.
It's
otherwise, yeah. But then the other thing, too, is I said this, too, on Stacking the Box on our Week 3 NFL recap show. If they keep putting him out there, and I'm not trying to be dramatic and just say things that are like, over the top. Legitimately, if this keeps up, you might, outside of football, hurt this kid. Just mentally. I mean, because imagine, that, again, we talk about this every day, the negative stuff he gets. I know he's not watching like First Take or whatever, but like some of this stuff has to make it through. I'm sure some teammates have told him like, hey man, like you gotta step it up a little bit. I guarantee you someone's told him stuff like that.
And even if they haven't, he knows. Like he can read body language. Like he knows.
He knows. And if Joe Namath is doing this in week 4, imagine if it's week 12 and he's still starting. What's gonna happen? Who's gonna say what? I mean,
week 12 and Zach Wilson is still the New York Jets starting quarterback. I don't even want to do this show anymore, dude. I truly believe that won't be the case. I hope that Sunday will be the last time we see Zach Wilson start. But I said that last year against the Jaguars. I thought that was going to be the last time that we saw Zach Wilson start a game, and here we are. So who knows?
Yeah, for all that talk about, are they going to lose the locker room? He already did lose the locker room once. You don't just get it all back as a quarterback immediately with doing nothing different. But see that, and again, Namath can say whatever he wants. He should be in an official capacity with the Jets, but he's not going to influence Jet policy too much. He's not like the overlord. He's not like an old medieval king who just, takes people's land. But I mean, when he says stuff like this, when the most positive guy ever says stuff like this, you ever hear a guy who's like who's not talkative at all, like scream and yell, and you're like, whoa, that just happened with the Jet. Like
the Jets broke the optimism in the fan base. Even look at like some of my favorite people, my favorite people in the Jets community, like NYJ Matt, NYJ Mike. They're like two of the most optimistic dudes. Look at their Twitter the last few days. They're miserable. Like the Jets broke their fan base. Like they really did. Even in the darkest times of like the Adam Gase era of recent dark times in Jets history, it wasn't like this because the expectations were different. Nobody had Super Bowl expectations when Adam Gase was New York Jets coach. Those were the expectations going into the year. And obviously Aaron Rodgers getting hurt, you can't blame the Jets for that. That just sucks. But that's partially why like there's just so much frustration on the part of Namath, on the part of the fan base, because it was supposed to be different, man. Like it wasn't supposed to be like this. It really wasn't.
It was supposed to be different, but again, I think what Namath's alluding to too is like, I think Namath also knows deep down they're not firing anybody, which I can get behind on a macro scale because, like I said before, Robert Saleh, no matter what he says to Zach Wilson, he can't physically make him throw the ball accurately to open receivers. Like you just can't do it. That's on Zach at this point. But because of that, there's nothing the Jets fans can kind of latch onto of like, all right, if we stomp our feet and get really mad, then they'll fire this guy. I mean, with Gase, I don't care how many games Gase won that second year, he was not returning. Like they were just fed up with him. He could have won 5 or 6, wouldn't have mattered. He would have been gone. You're not going to get that this year. So they know that no matter what they have to watch for 3 months, they got to organize their week around it. People got season tickets going to every single game. They got to watch, again, like they could change to Trevor Siemian, but I'm honestly operating under the idea that they don't because they've moved so slow with everything else quarterback related. They got to go watch horrible quarterback play, minimal accountability for the quarterback play, and then everybody come back next year the exact same. So they're saying why? That's the problem. That's the issue. Like I see Niner Gang again in chat. Thanks for coming in for getting some Niners fans here. Jets should go after Cousins. They're not going to do that. Joe Namath can say whatever he wants. Joe Namath can say, get Kirk Cousins right now, or I'm never going to another Jets game as long as I live. I still don't think they'd do that. And that's the issue. That's why guys are so angry.
I think there is a scenario where the Jets get Kirk Cousins. I do believe that that's a possibility. I don't think it's likely. And I know I said like last week or 2 weeks in the show that it wasn't going to happen. I think I've come around a little bit more about it being possible. I think Tannehill is a lot more likely. The Cousins thing would have to be the Vikings are 1-6 or 2-5 or whatever at the trade deadline. And they say, all right, we're punting on the season. That's it. Season's over. Cousins isn't going to be back next year. That's it. We're moving on. And if they decide that, it's possible. I think it is possible that he becomes available. And I think if he becomes available and the Jets are in a situation where they say, all right, our roster is good enough, whoever it has been, Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian has kept us afloat. Maybe we can make a push at the playoffs here. Maybe they go and do that. I think it's possible. I don't think it's likely. I also think, and again, maybe I'm just being optimistic here, I really don't think Zach Wilson is starting more than 2 games for the rest of the season with the Jets, barring injuries to anyone else. I really think that at worst, assuming he's bad, and assuming he's still really bad, at worst, he's starting through week 6, and then that's it, or week 5, starting through week 5, and then that's it. I really believe that. I think that they have the fact that they have Siemian in there. They're talking him up, saying he's a quick study. I mean, not that it means much, but he went to Northwestern, smart school, whatever. Like, I think he can come in and learn the offense well enough to run it within a week or 2. If Zach Wilson is still really bad, I don't see any way where they can say we're still starting Zach Wilson, and they can look the rest of the roster dead in the eyes and say this guy gives us the best chance to win. I don't believe they would do that. I truly, truly don't. Maybe I'm just being optimistic. I just don't think that happens.
For Zach Wilson's sake, I hope he doesn't start too many more games.
For everyone's sake.
He's not. There's no possible way he could be in a good place mentally right now.
No, and
I don't believe it.
And I can't blame him. He of all the people he's suffering the most, he shouldn't be in this situation. Quarterbacks that are as bad as he is do not get this many opportunities in the NFL. The only reason he's on a roster is because of his draft status. When the Jets inevitably move on from him, I'm not sure he plays another NFL game. I don't think he will. I really don't think he will. He's unplayable.
If you asked him right now, like, do you want to start for the Jets against the Chiefs next week? I'm sure he'd say, yeah. There'd be a part of him, not insignificantly, that would say no. Because what good's going to come out? He's going to get killed. He's going to stink. We're all going to get on here and say Zach Wilson's terrible. He should never start again. And then the cycle's going to repeat against Denver.
Yep.
Unless Trevor Siemian comes in. So with that, Justin, we have an impossible task to close the show out with.
Well, first, I have an impossible, not impossible ad read to do, I believe.
Good segue.
That was flawless, by the way. Anyway, a little message from our friends at DraftKings. Jets fans, DraftKings is up there. Sign up offer to kick off football season. New users can place a $5 first bet to instantly claim $200 in bonus bets, plus up to $150 back in bonus bets if your team loses, which, as we covered before, seems likely for the Jets. All you have to do is sign up with our code FSBETS. That's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Using our code FSBETS, that's FSBETS, not only gets you these great bonuses, but it also directly supports our podcast and helps us out. And of course, we always appreciate that. If you've been considering signing up for DraftKings, make sure to use our code FSBETS. That's FSBETS to maximize your first bets. This offer is available to new customers who are 21 and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the episode description for full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. All right, now, Mike, it is time to talk some Jets versus Chiefs.
And what do you really want us to say at this point? Because this is the problem, too, with any Zach Wilson-led offense is even though the Bears had no shot of ever winning that game, you can at least look at that game and say, all right, Justin Fields can run really well. They need to keep him in the pocket. When he does throw deep down the field, which is never, he's actually shown like a little bit of deep accuracy, like on like go routes and stuff like that. So try to keep everything in front of you. If you're Steve Spagnuolo, like what are you trying to take away? You don't even have to take away Garrett Wilson. You can leave him open and it'll be fine. All you have to do, and even again, sometimes you may not even have to do this, is get a little bit of interior pressure. And then Zach Wilson's going to freak out and run out and spin down and make a bad play. So, because of that, the only possible way, as Robert Saleh has admitted, basically in his press conferences, is everybody else has to play perfectly. Speaking about that defense, which is the toughest task in the league, trying to slow down Patrick Mahomes, because you can't stop Patrick Mahomes. You can slow him down. You can't stop him. It's a really unique challenge for this Jets defense because obviously the Chiefs receivers are pretty bad this year. Kadarius Toney had, not even trying to be funny, can you like mathematically have a worse game as a wide receiver than he had in week 1?
No, I'm pretty sure it was like, I think it was like EPA or something like that. Every time they targeted him, they lost 2 points.
He had 4 targets. I believe he had 1 catch for 1 yard, 3 drops and a fumble, and then a pick six that went off his hands. I mean,
he's since bounced back a little bit, but that game was you could argue that was the worst wide receiver performance in NFL history. Yeah, you could definitely argue that.
There was that. I mean, Sky Moore, whatever. Rashee Rice, that was your guy, Rashee Rice, but he's a rookie.
I did like Rashee Rice. You
got to let him kind of come into his own. So really, it's all going to be about Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
And how you try to limit
Taylor Swift.
Oh yeah. Now, so keep in mind, not only Travis Kelce, he's going to have the I'm trying to impress everybody in front of my new girl, who's also the most popular singer on the planet right now, Taylor Swift. Maybe Bad Bunny if you count all the. Anyway, most popular singer in America, Taylor Swift. Like, so you got that on top of you. It's like, you ever go watch guys play basketball and then a girl shows up and they're doing crazy dribbles and pulling up from 30 feet?
Pull up the pants, got like,
that's what Travis Kelce is going to end up doing. So you got that boost. You got that jetpack on his back. And then you have the fact that, like with last year, even though the corners aren't playing as elite as they were last year, like they're still playing pretty well. Like Sauce Gardner had a rough week 1. Week 2, despite what people say, he was actually very good against CeeDee Lamb. Week 3, he was old school Sauce Gardner, locking things down. DJ Reed, been very good. Michael Carter, been very good. I think they're all like top 20-ish graded cornerbacks in the league. So that's what you want out of your guys. But they're going to be on wide receivers that really aren't going to break the game open. It's going to be Kelsey. And they've been able to move the ball, opposing passing offenses, again, targeting some of the linebackers and some of the safeties. It's not as bad as last year, but that's how guys are moving the ball. They're finding soft spots in the zone, which is still a very soft zone, and they're challenging C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams and Jordan Whitehead to make plays after the catch. And sometimes they do. They did against New England for large parts of it, but against Dallas, they certainly did not. So I'm conflicted on if the Jets go, we're going to go all in on stopping Kelsey, or if you just say, you know what, he's going to get 9 catches for 90 yards. Like, we just got to let him do that and not let, somebody else come and surprise us. I'm not sure what the game plan will be.
Would you say that Travis Kelce might be able to find the blank spaces in the Jets zone defense on Sunday?
What blank space? What?
Are you not? It's a Taylor Swift song.
Oh, I'm not. I don't know. I don't.
Come on, man. You give all these references to me, and I reference one of the most popular songs by Taylor Swift.
I don't have a problem with Taylor Swift. That's just not my genre. And,
I wanted to throw out more too. Yeah. I wanted to be like, in the Jets' wildest dreams, they couldn't.
You can do it. I just you can do it for your entertainment.
I'm gonna sneak some in, maybe if I could think of some more. I'll be like, it's not the Jets style to.
Is that it? Okay. I had people texting me that I hadn't talked to in years who knew nothing about football, and they're like, "Hey, is Travis Kelce like a good guy, a nice guy?" I'm like, I don't know him personally. Seems like it, but I don't know why I'm your first call either. But that's kind of the level of the discourse right now.
I will say, the Jets have to shake it off. They have to shake off that loss to the.
I know that one. I'm not that like.
I mean, bad or blank space that's a pretty popular song by her.
It fooled me.
That's a pretty popular song. But yeah, I want to say too. I want to shout out to move aside from the Taylor Swift puns for a second. If I can think of more, I'll throw them out. I want to shout out Quincy Williams because I think he's going to be a key in this game. He has had a really, really good start to the season. I know we're talking about so many things with the quarterback situation, with the coaching staff, with everything. That's flown under the radar. He is, I believe, PFF's 9th or 8th best linebacker so far through 3 weeks, and he's their 3rd best coverage linebacker, which that's going to be really important against Travis Kelce. I'm sure they're going to have plenty of situations where they line up Kelce opposite or Sauce Gardner opposite Travis Kelce, but there will be situations where he's lined up against a safety or a linebacker. And right now, Quincy Williams is probably their best bet because he's starting to put it all together. I mean, we've talked about this with Quincy Williams for years that, the Jets have said numerous times he has Pro Bowl upside. Like he can be one of the best linebackers in football. He just has to put it together. Honestly, I never thought he would. Like I never thought he'd put it together in the way that he's putting it together now. So I think he's going to be really important to watch, especially if Tony Adams doesn't play again, because I have a feeling Adams might have been the guy that they would match up with Kelce. I don't know if they want to do it with Adrian Amos as much. So I think
Whitehead's smaller. That wouldn't be.
Yeah, I don't think I would do that.
And even Sauce will cover him, but I mean, Travis got 60 pounds on him. I mean,
yeah. No, I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, Travis Kelce is the man.
I don't believe Sauce is 200 pounds anyway. He might be like 170. That man is skinny.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, Kelce, the Jets are going to have some bad blood with Kelce and the Chiefs offense. I'm throwing in more. I know they're going over your head.
So, no, that one I know. That's another story about how I know that one. But
it was the man as well. I threw that one in there. I don't know. All right, I'm done with these because now
these are very generic names. You could have just said them. And
all right. Well, I mean, try working in. We are never ever getting back together into
the Jets and Zach Wilson will never be back together after this game.
It was a cruel summer for the Jets. It really wasn't a cruel summer for the Jets. It was actually a pretty great summer. It's been a cruel.
That was a Danzig album, "Cruel Summer."
It was also a song. It's also a song by Taylor Swift. I got a lot. I could throw some more out, but I don't think at the end of the day, I don't think that this will be the Jets' love story on Sunday.
But one thing I'm looking at too with Kansas City, if they have any chance of possibly, wouldn't that be amazing if they beat the Chiefs and then Taylor Swift's like, actually, I want to go date Breece Hall or something like that.
Oh, what if it was Zach Wilson? Wouldn't that be nuts?
Oh my God, that might get him another year in the NFL off of that alone.
If Zach Wilson went on a single date with Taylor Swift, that would his confidence That's it. Like he would become the most confident quarterback in the NFL.
Next game, 400 yards, 4 touchdowns.
That would be the key to unlocking Zach Wilson. You just need to set him up with a celebrity.
In all seriousness, though, that defense, I think people got this thing in their head. I've complained about this with the Jets offensive line, where people have just assumed the offensive line is like unplayable. So no matter what people say about them, like you just can't be convinced otherwise. It's almost like that with the Chiefs defense. Because remember early in Mahomes' career, he had awful defenses like the first 2 years. The first year when he had like set all the records and then lost to the Patriots, and then the Super Bowl year, the defense was not very good. And he had to win every game, like, 38-30 every single week. And he did, but he had to. That's not the Chiefs anymore. This defense, man, is absolutely balling right now. And obviously Chris Jones is going to be the main guy you try to stop. But he's going to almost be like an Aaron Donald guy where you're like, he's going to get his. He's going to disrupt things. We got to kind of work around him. You look at this defense, they've only given up 40 points in 3 games. And again, they play the Lions, who had the most high-octane, crazy offense last year, holding to 21 points. They go play Trevor Lawrence on the road, holding to 9 points, and then 10 against the Bears, and that was when they were already up 41-0, and they gave up. So really, functionally, when they were in games, it was 30 points in 3 games. This defense is balling. I think the corners are a lot better right now. They're like legitimate, got some lockdown guys with Algerius Sneed on the outside. This defense is opportunistic. This defense is almost kind of what Robert Saleh, like this is what I feel like tries to emulate a lot, because Spagnuolo does not blitz a ton. Guys fly to space. They're fast. They tackle hard. It's going to be tough. I don't care who is the quarterback, Siemian, Aaron Rodgers, anybody, to score against this Chiefs defense. So the only possible way that they're going to succeed, and again, it's impossible because they're going to stack the box again because of Zach Wilson, is you got to get Breece Hall going. Because it doesn't matter if Garrett Wilson's going because Zach Wilson can't see him. So it's got to be the ground game. And this is going to be the make or break game almost in his career for Dalvin Cook. Like if Dalvin Cook, he's been bad to start. One of the worst running backs in the league to start. Because they're going to give him the ball a lot on dump offs to spell Breece Hall because they're going to run the ball a lot. If he's terrible, if he gets another, 7 carries, 13 yards, 2 catches for 11 yards. If that happens again, I don't care what you paid him. I might just eat the money at that point because it's not helping anybody.
Yeah, I mean, you talked earlier about interior pressure, like if the Chiefs get any sort of interior pressure, it could be curtains for Zach Wilson. And unfortunately, they have Chris Jones. Like it's not just Chris Jones. George Karlaftis has 2 sacks through the first 3 weeks. I don't know if Nick Bolton is going to play because he's been banged up, but he's a really good linebacker. That secondary is balling. They have a lot of great players. It is a fearless Chiefs defense. I'm throwing in some more, by the way. I'm throwing in some more. I've tried.
I know the albums.
Okay. So. Fearless. I would say that if the Jets lose this game, you could say it's karma for starting Zach Wilson.
See, these are just regular things you could say. These are just words.
Look what you made me do, Mike. I'm throwing out more.
I'm gonna hang up this call, and you're gonna be left by yourself talking to nobody in 2 seconds.
Dude, I realize I know more Taylor Swift songs than I thought I knew because I'm throwing out so many. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I spent the last 4 minutes while you're talking being like, what other Taylor Swift songs do I know that I could throw out some more Taylor Swift? This is how I'm entertaining myself during a segment where we have to try and talk about how the Jets could maybe, possibly, potentially beat the Chiefs with Zach Wilson, the quarterback, which I think that brings us to our final thought, Mike. What is your prediction for this game? I would love to hear what you think the final score is going to be and who wins.
Chiefs 31, Jets 10.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do. They score 10 points. That's what the offense does. And this is why, and this isn't even, we're laughing about it, Taylor Swift. It's going to be funny. I compare him to the Washington Generals going against the Globetrotters. I mean, even the national media now and during the game, there's not even entertaining for a second that the Jets can win this game. Now, they can use that to their advantage. Nobody believes in us. And maybe a good coach like Saleh, who I think is a good motivator, can get guys riled up for that. But, I mean, the Jets are going to just be a pommel horse for Travis Kelce. There's going to be more shots. Here's a good bet to make during the game. Will there be more shots of Taylor Swift, if she attends, or Zach Wilson? I think it's Swift. Because they're going to cut through after every Kelsey play.
Well, it depends on what you mean shot. Because like Zach Wilson, if he's playing, he's a quarterback.
Maybe
Zach Wilson.
There's going to be more discussion rather. Because I think when this game gets out of hand, they're not going to talk about how Wilson made another stupid interception or fell down on a sack or made a dumb play. They're going to be filling time and talking about her.
No, I mean, you're not wrong. I think I'll say 35-6. And I don't think
I was optimistic. You were even giving them less of a chance.
I don't think they're putting up 35 on the defense. I think there's maybe a defensive score in there. I think the defense is getting put in bad situation after bad situation. I'll say 35-6. I think Zach Wilson genuinely has a complete meltdown because this has all the rest of everything going into this game has the makings of a Zach Wilson meltdown performance. Like turnover, he got very lucky whatever you want to call it, against Patriots. He didn't turn the ball over. Genuinely, I know we shit on him a lot. That was his best game he's ever played against Patriots, which is not
out of 5,
which is saying like basically nothing, but it was. I think the turnovers come back this week, and I think he completely implodes. I really think that's going to happen. I know I was optimistic last week. I said they were going to win, which, hey man, in my defense, if they had literally even like a top 80 quarterback in the world, they probably win that game. They just didn't, unfortunately.
Shut down in the flat on 4th and 10 because by his own admission, he thought Tyler Conklin could juke a guy and make a miss.
Yeah, it's bad. But I'll say 35-6. And before I could think of any more Taylor Swift puns.
You know how I know he shot and how I know they got no chance? Because it was the same thing. When he, in the post game, when they asked him what went wrong and he said, I don't know. That's what he said after the Jaguars game, was what happened out there. And he said, I don't know. So he is just way gone. Like, again, I think they're going to break because Breece Hall's talented and Garrett Wilson will get behind the defense for a big play every now and again. And the defense, this is going to be the worst part of the debate next week, is because the defense is going to give up a lot of points because they're going to be on the field a lot. And through no fault of their own, just Patrick Mahomes is going to make some insane plays. He does that a lot. And then we're going to get, everybody needs to be better again. And then it'll have more credence if they give up a lot of points to Mahomes. So that's what I'm really not looking forward to.
Look, you made a mistake, Mike. You gave me more time to think of Taylor Swift puns. Not to be mean, but I think that Zach Wilson, we could very safely call him the anti-hero of the Jets.
You could say there's a Taylor Swift song called Zach Wilson, and I believe you. Like you could say whatever.
Yeah, that was one. You missed that pun. I said Zach Wilson. That's a pun. That's a
I only knew this too because I remember I knew it was one person and she had a whole list of like all the Taylor Swift songs, like almost in a ranking. She was a really big fan, so just through osmosis, I've kind of picked up a couple of them. But
I like Taylor Swift. I can't say I'm a super fan, but I like playing Taylor Swift songs.
Did you see that one video going around of it was like Swift fans, first down is when they get the ball past 10 yards, like the most basic explaining rules of football ever.
Taylor Swift NFL memes are so funny right now. They are. I'm so glad this is happening, and I hope I see even more because they're playing the Jets this week. I really do.
And you know what? Good for the game. It's getting more young girls, female fans. Like good if that's what gets you your foot in the door. Then I welcome that.
Sure. I saw people being like, oh, yeah, like, I mean, knowing the Swifties and knowing this Taylor Swift fandom, they're going to be explaining EPA per play within a few weeks. Like, they're going to be on top.
God, they're going to find where I live after I said I don't know their songs. I mean, dude, they're afraid of these girls.
They're going to be coming up with ways to stop Mike McDaniel's offense. They're going to figure out things that the NFL hasn't figured out yet because those are the type of people this fan base is. And I respect it. I honestly do.
So thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Jet Press Podcast right before their expected funeral in front of the national audience, where that's going to be a snuff movie. If you want to see a good snuff film, you can go turn on NBC at 8:15 at night and then only watch the first half. And then maybe later you could, call your grandmother or, do some Meals on Wheels stuff or something more productive instead of watching Zach Wilson.
Come in and you can vent with us. You can cope with us because we'll be live after the game.
We will be live after the game. You can be as angry as you want or as apathetic as you want. Just make sure you tune in. Make sure you do it there. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it may be that you get your podcasts. We're on all the platforms. And we're on YouTube and TikTok at The Jet Press. Make sure you subscribe because with every YouTube subscription, make sure you tell your friends because with every sub, I'm one step closer to having to eat that disgusting honey bun
Mhm.
turkey chicken Cheetos sandwich that's probably going to make me crap for 2 hours in a row. Thank God Sauce Gardner's a 23-year-old athlete in his prime, and he could digest that, because you can make me suffer. All you got to do is hit that sub button, and I, as a glutton for punishment, will do it for you. So
You're a skinny guy. I don't know how you even have room for that sandwich. It's gonna like double your weight.
well, yeah, my stomach is not going to be able to take all those calories. It's going to be like, this is too much.
Yeah, and of course we have that Joe Klecko interview. I mentioned it earlier, but that is going up live on YouTube tomorrow. And if you were listening on audio right now, if you're not listening live and you're listening on audio right now, stick around, because right after this, you're going to hear it. It's going to be put in right after this. But yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, watching live right now, definitely check it out tomorrow. You're not going to want to miss it. Some pretty cool stuff in there. And of course, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at by Mike Luciano. You can follow me on Twitter at Justin T. Freed. Follow the Jet Press at the Jet Press. You can download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Also check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, like, hit that notification bell. We're also over on TikTok. You can subscribe and like our stuff over there as well. We stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time and live following every single Jets game. Thank you all for listening to the Jet Press podcast. I've been Justin Freed. That has been Mike Luciano. We'll see you guys next time.
Let's hope it's not as bad as we think it'll be on Sunday night.
Trevor Siemian.